brought up something in your recent podcast that on this topic that was very interesting, and you basically said, "Where's the effect that over the many decades the Democratic Party has tended to favor the poor with their let's say their handouts, their populism, their socialism,
Right.
whereas the Republicans have tended to favor the wealthy or corporate America."
Right.
And maybe it's that effect that's partially behind this divergence that you're showing. But then you mentioned that Donald Trump basically does populism for the rich and the poor.
Yeah.
And that is, to me, a very important change. In that, you know, some of these inflationary implications of his policies, which the market is only kind of waking up to, particularly the bond market, you know, that seems to be really a pretty cataclysmic shift. So any additional thoughts on that part of it?
100%. I mean, that to me is you are front running the bouncing ball. I mean, so that's exactly it. And I'll sort of speed up to sort of answer your question. So the answer is yes. We've had historically seen Democrats favor government social benefits as a supplement to household incomes over the past few generations. We've certainly seen Republicans favor lower and lower effective corporate tax rates, and the spread between these two policies is the accumulation of public debt. You know, we have a spending problem in this country. We also have a revenue problem in this country as well, and that's sort of the key takeaway. That's one of the key takeaways from our analysis here with respect to the fourth turning, is that you're probably going to have a situation where we force the Fed into the game, into the ball game, in terms of having to essentially monetize U.S. public sector debts and public sector deficits, and ultimately the Fed's response to that could, in fact, create a very inflationary impulse in the economy. In fact, what we found is that when you go back and you study sort of some of the economic time series in the fourth turning, one of the things we've observed is that CPI tends to be explosive in fourth turning regimes. You typically see a sharp acceleration in inflation in these fourth turning regimes, and I think we're only just getting started in the context of what will the Fed be forced to do in response to what is likely to be an acceleration in public sector debt, an explosive acceleration in public sector debt accumulation. You know, we're anchoring on sort of a forecast from the Committee for Responsible Federal Budget, which we've, through our research have identified as the most sort of bipartisan think tank down in DC as it relates to fiscal matters. And what we found is that if you sort of add up all the things that President Trump has promised on the campaign trail, you're talking about an additional $7.5 trillion of incremental deficits and debt relative to the baseline. Now, obviously, not everything he's said on the campaign trail is going to turn into law. But even if we haircut that some significant manner, we're still talking probably about $3.5 to $5 trillion of additional public sector debt that will be added to the U.S. public sector balance sheet. If you took all of his policies at face value, we're talking about a public sector debt to GDP ratio in the United States 10 years from now at about 125%, which is already past the point of no return if you look at some of the data we've observed with Reinhard and Rogoff and subsequent studies.